How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we're taking a look at your favorite, based on the views at least, type of tournament. That is God of Commander 9, the latest big Japanese cEDH event. These events usually have pretty wild deck lists. I think for the most part, we're starting to see some of the international metas get a little bit closer to what we expect to see, and some things getting ironed out, and there's a bit less of the differences, but we'll see when we get there. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know which of these deck lists was your favorite. Thank you as always to my amazing patrons over on Patreon. Your support helps me make lots of these videos for you guys every week. Hopefully, gonna be doing lots of Top Deck Invitational content next week. Let me know what you'd like to see about that. I'm gonna be there, gonna be doing the top 16 breakdown, of course, and maybe even going a lot deeper than that. We'll see. But I think with all that being said, we can go ahead and hop into it. I've partnered with magic artist Forrest Immel to promote his 5-color playmat collection Kickstarter. Featuring a unique thematic design for each mana symbol, these stitched edge and hand signed mats will make a beautiful addition to your collection. But this is a limited print run, so get them now at the link in the description so you don't miss out. I've actually even been sharing these with my friends to pick up because I'm such a huge fan of these designs. I love the clean look that isn't too in your face or busy, but still perfectly shows off your style. Get yours now. So we do have a metagame breakdown here for this event. We're going to take a look at some of the more popular decks. At number 1, we have Nadu, which has been really popular over here, but still isn't usually the most popular in any given large event. It's still usually Tymna Kraum, which we see is pretty popular here, but we had 11 Nadus, 9 Tymna Kraums, and then Derevis, which I think for the most part feature Nadu in the 99 also as an option. So kind of like almost 17 Nadus, sort of, with Secret Commander Nadu or, you know, something like that. Rog Sai coming in at 5, and then Rog Tevesh, an option that's always really popular over there and tends to do well. I think we've seen as many as like 3 of them top. Zella Lee the Outrageous, that's got to be a translation thing or something, right? I don't think that's her name. Pretty popular. Kinnan, Tivit, Rocco. So a couple different things. There's decks like Corvold popping up as pretty popular too. Definitely some swaps from what we might expect to see, right? We don't really see Sisei as part of like the very popular part of the metagame, at least in this tournament. And I feel like in previous events too, we just don't see the Siseis pop up nearly as much. If you're not familiar with the structure of this event, it is a open Swiss, like most of the tournaments here. They use a different system for points where they have an ELO system where players get a percentage of their opponent's ELO that you start with when you win. If the game is declared a draw, then everyone loses a percentage of their ELO. So you don't have any incentive to ID. You're really encouraged to actually push for wins in this format, and IDing is not really a thing. There are upsides and downsides to this. A lot of people want me to talk about it at length and about how it's the perfect system, blah, blah, blah. Not going to get into the math and stuff behind that, but there are reasons we don't use it, whether it's better or worse, blah, blah, blah. Not going to go into that today, but it's a very different system. The other uniqueness of this event is that we cut to top 12 instead of top 16 because the winner or the God of Commander of the previous event gets to get a full ride up to the top 4 pod to defend their title. So that's kind of the main differences we see here. Let's get into the deck list. First up at 12th place, we have a Tivit. Oh, already actually kind of some interesting differences here. So stapley stuff we expect to see. I'm not going to point out too much of that. We are missing Grand Abolisher, which we saw in some of the Chinese decks too, missing Grand Abolishers and Ranger Captains. Got Weathered Wayfarer here. Really odd include in Tivit. I've never seen that. Gray Mastermind and OK Engine. A Call, 2 and a blue. At the beginning of each player's end step, if an artifact enters the battlefield under your control this turn, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one into your hand, the other into your graveyard. That feels on the cutesier side. Curious if we're going to be able to reasonably trigger this on opponent's turns. We'll see. Got Tashada's Tidebinder, nice control option. Kitten here, no Teferi, just rocking the Kitten. We are on Urza. And then Witch Enchanter, a card that's pretty playable that we just haven't seen. One of the MDFCs that is sort of like a Reclamation Sage, and then is an untapped Bolt land on the back. Then Harvester of Misery, which is a nice kind of hard to counter way to kill a creature. Pay 1 and a black, discard it, target creature gets -2/-2, and then can just be like a board wipe, you know, a sort of a massacre worm effect. It's just casting it. Fairy, so we're going pretty big here. Teferi as well, shuts out our opponents, and then Emrakul the Promised End, which has been a card we've seen in the Japanese meta as the whole time I've been covering it, and is really good at breaking mid-range games. If you cast this thing, there's not really much people can do about it. I guess they could Tidebinder it, but it's a triggered ability, gain control of target opponent on their turn, on their next turn, and they take an extra turn. You can do a lot of damage with this. You can just straight up win the game with this if an opponent has like a breach line that they they have access to, and you can perform that breach line for them and make them mill themselves out and everybody else out and kill themselves. Sorceries, really going heavy on the board wise. So you got the Nuclear Fallout, which we don't see a lot of, but pops up every now and then. Toxic Deluge, which is pretty popular, and then Supreme Verdict, which very, very rarely shows up. Can't be countered, destroy all creatures. I mean, it's a little tricky to cast. This can be one of those cards that just makes sure what you need to have happen happens in a game. Instance, we see Offer You Can't Refuse. Oh, I know we're going hard on the silence effects already. I see the Abeyance down there. Offer You Can't Refuse. Orum's Chant, of course, regular silence, Strict Serenade, Drown in the Lock. I hate seeing this card. Get this out of my face. Abeyance, till end of turn, target player cannot play instants, interrupts. This is really instants or sorceries or activate abilities, and then you draw a card. Then Calamity's Wake. We are going ultra hard on the silence effects. This might be the hardest on the silence effects I've ever seen, and we're going really hard at the MDFCs. We're also on the Limb Duel's Vault, Mana Drain. We are just here to hold up 2 mana. Permission Denied. It's a counter spell that is also like a Ranger Captain effect. Resculpt as removal. Whirlwind Denial for each spell and ability. No way, dude. 2 and a blue for each spell and ability your opponents control. Counter unless its controller pays 4. A really weird kind of mind break trap-ish effect. It is less surgical than an NBT. You don't have as much control over it. That's a weird one. I have not seen that one before. That's a pretty cool one. And then we got the Waterlogged Teachings and Sink into Stupor. But Sink into Stupor we've seen a decent amount of. Waterlogged Teachings is a tapped blue-black land on the back and is a tutor for an instant or a card with flash. No ad nauseum, of course. We got Waterlogged Teachings. We can't even think about it. Artifacts, we've got a bunch of mana. We're at the Expedition map. Curious what land we might be tutoring for. Grim Monolith. We are on the One Ring. Not too many talismans. Not a billion rocks. Enchantments, fairly well what I would expect. Like Dress Down is a little bit less popular now, I think, in the Tivits over here. Counterbalance, also not as popular. We were not on the top. Perfectly fine options for control-y Esper Shells, and then Trouble in Paris, Smothering Tithe. We expect to see these kind of cards in this deck. 31 lands, including MDFC, so very high. We got the Archwave Innovation. I talked about this recently. I don't know that this card is all that good. I think it might be a little bit of bait in Tivit. I guess you have Emrakul to reduce, so you can improvise an Emrakul into play. That's pretty cool. It doesn't look quite worth it, but I don't know. We're on the Cavern of Souls, we're on Manamo, we're on Fomori Vault, so really looking to take advantage of the large amount of artifacts that we have. Skyshroud Expanse, such a weird land. Meticulous Archive, we are on the Surveil land. Talon Gates, you can really like 6 mana surprise someone by activating your map and then putting a Talon Gates and Madara into play. And we are on the Urza Saga. 11th place, we're taking a look at a Rocco, not a commander we've seen a whole lot of recently. I mean, we've talked about sort of the fall of Rocco. It still has the same strengths that it has had, but you know, format's a little quicker now, stacks a little bit less, you know, of a thing, but we'll see which direction we're leaning. We got Vivian on the hunt, so we're probably doing some of those Kiki pod kind of shenanigans as you'd expect. We are on the Wirewood Symbiote, pretty nice to be able to bounce back our Rocco. Man, I haven't talked about this deck in forever. We're on the Collector Oof. Sometimes it can be a point of tension in the Rocco builds because they are like Dockside Extortionist, Emil, and or Teamer Sabretooth decks. There's some other tension with Emil we'll talk about. Other flex slots. Dauntless Dismantler, asymmetrical, pretty nice. Notably, no Drannith Magistrate in this deck list. Something we've seen cut more and more of in the US, but not something you expect to see cut in stacks of your list. But we got like Deep Gnome Terramancer, Destiny Spinner to help our spells resolve. We're on the Goblin, the blank Goblin, Sticker Goblin, whatever you want to call him. Grand Abolisher, Priest, Titanium, Spirit of the Labyrinth as a way to shut down draw engines. No Rule of Law creature, no Archon of Emeria, none of that. We're not doing that. Gwynna, Eyes of Gaia. Tap to add 2 mana of any color, spin this deck. Cast creatures. When you cast a creature, it costs 5 or more. You put a counter on and untap it. Tap this for 2. Cast a Rocco that's X equals 2 or more. You're going to get to untap it. Pretty hot. Sage of the Mage. Add 2 mana of any colors. Any combination of colors. Till end of turn, target line you control becomes a XX citizen. Tap an untap gate you control. Untap it. Hey, we're probably on Talon Gates. You might be able to do something with that, you know? Really valuing the bigger dorks in this list. Plus the smaller ones too. I mean, there's a lot of regular dorks here. And so we're stocked up on dorks. Skyclave Apparition, nice option to tutor for. Somber Wild Sage, again, big old dork. So we're doing the food chain stuff. You absolutely expect to see that in Rocco. So we got the Village Bellringer, ETB, untap all creatures. That combos with our Kiki-Jiki. We also have Feldar Guardian to combo with our Kiki-Jiki, and we can do the Karmic Guide, Birthing Pod line, pod a 3-drop into Feldar Guardian, flicker our Birthing Pod, and or our Vivian on the Hunt. Works the same with either one. Use the pod on Feldar Guardian, have a Karmic Guide come into play, which will bring back Feldar Guardian, flicker our pod effect again, pod away Feldar Guardian into Kiki-Jiki, have Kiki-Jiki enter, tap and make a Karmic Guide copy, which will bring back Photo Guardian, which will then flicker Kiki-Jiki, and you have gone all this way and then you'll be able to make infinite cats to kill everybody. So I mentioned Team Sabretooth. It's good. Emil is a little awkward in Rocco in that you can't refire on Rocco. You can't use Rocco to set up Dockside Emil and then do the thing again. Rocco, you have to spend mana on him. You have to cast him. And the way that Emil works, this templating of a blink effect, you don't get the opportunity to put Rocco into the command zone. There's no point where there's a check for that. It's kind of a weird rules thing, but you don't get to do it. He just comes straight back. You don't get a choice. Elish Norn, that shuts down opponent's ETBs and doubles ours. This was an option we started to see towards the tail end of Rocco doing well. Twin Shot Sniper, nice little bit of utility. Sorceries, not too many, just creature tutors and then an idyllic tutor to maybe go get our food chain. Instants, not too many of them as well. Another Orange Champ player, okay. Veil, Silence, Get Lost, and then Return the Favor too in a Nihilist. That's kind of cool. Artifacts, not too many. Just a bit of fast mana, the Birthing Pod we expect to see, and then also on the One Ring. Enchantments, we got the food chain, we got Sylvan Library, we are on Deafening Silence. This shouldn't affect us very much. We're very much a creature deck. And then Carpet to make mana, Tithe to make mana, and then Trouble in Paris. And we're on 30 lands, still pretty high land count. Seeing some odd land choices like Rushland. We are on the Cradle. Cavern of Souls is on Elf, is phenomenal in this deck. Not too many other wild choices. We're not on the Talon Gates and we're not doing Crop Rot stuff. I think that'd be kind of a hot include because you get to do the little Sage of the Maze thing too. I mean, I don't know. It's cutesy enough. And that's like, those are just good cards. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. Next up, we got a Kinnan. This deck can still do something. It just has to be in a different country. 22 creatures, and we got some pretty interesting includes. Jaspera Sentinel, which is a dork that doesn't die to Bowmasters. Not very easily, at least. We're on the Polywog Prodigy. Nice value engine we're seeing a decent bit of over here. Volatile Storm Drake and Gilded Drake. Aboleth Spawn, pretty nice option to kind of steal opponent's ETBs. We see in general, this list looks like it's more utilizing value non-humans over running a million different big flip options. Like we have things like Fairy Artisan, which again, kind of takes advantage of what our opponent's doing. It can play into like the ability to just flip into something with Kinnan and kind of sneak something in like that. Same with Endurance, Clones. And we have 3 real big flip targets in Hullbreaker Horror, Nyx Bloom Ancient, and Jin-Gitaxias, which we definitely have not seen much of really since this came out. And it wasn't like a staple when it did. Of course, cards like Seabombers you always expect to see. Hydroelectric Specimen, land that can also be a non-human, pretty nice. Sorceries, fairly well what you would expect. Artifact tutors as well as 1 creature tutor and Finale. I feel like when your mana values look like this for your Kinnan list, you maybe more want to think about running like an Eldritch Evolution. Turn like the, Endurance you flipped into the Steedborn Muse, something like that, because you don't have like all your value up at 7 or 8. You have good value on 4 and 3. Instance, we're on the Brainstorm, which can be pretty nice in Kinnan to manipulate our flips. We are Crop Rotting, Offer You Can't Refuse, Strict Serenade, Sink into Stupor, another nice new option. We're on the Fierce, Force, no Mindbreak Trap. That's a really interesting call there. Not in my metagame, buddy. My metagame, you better be running that Mindbreak Trap. That is your only out sometimes. Opted not to run it here. Artifacts. The mana we'd expect to see in a Kinnan build, though we do also see things like Manifold Key, Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which can be a mana fixer for Kinnan and just pretty good card. You're running a million dorks, it's graveyard hate. Another really interesting includes Staff of Completion, another card that just is inexplicably more popular in Japan. At the very least, you can pay 4 life and draw a card. It's not the most amazing rate, but Kinnan's not a deck that gets its life total punished. It's just pretty flexible. Pay 2 life, make 2 mana with Kinnan out, Proliferate comes up when you're playing with a One Ring. Enchantments, Mystic Ristic, on the Carpet of Flowers, no Sylvan Library. 30 lands, again, pretty high on the land count. We've got Manamo, some basics. We're on the Shifting Woodland, Treasure Vault. Oh, we're also on Teleria West to be able to tutor up for some of these zeros. Pretty different take on Kinnan. Not as into the big flips, but looking to like maybe have some generally higher card quality, have more of your non-humans at different mana values that are more reasonable to cast in the mid game. Another deck that is a Japanese staple for some reason. That's Thada Adel Acquisitor. Let me go get your One Ring. Just come into a player, search that player's library for an artifact, exile it, then you can cast it. So you can go get their One Ring. You can exile something useful to them like their Lions and Diamond, things like that. And we're also going to be pretty dedicated to using the ring ourselves. We have Tezzeret to just put it into play. We got Ballista here, so maybe comboing off with that. Value engines like Ghostly Pilferer that have been really left behind in today's meta, but showing up here. I mean, you're in mono blue, right? You got to work with what you got. We're on the Storm Drake and the Gilded Drake. Thieving Skydiver is a genuinely pretty annoying card. And cEDH, you kick this thing for one, everybody's your friend suddenly when everybody has a Mana Crypt or a Soul Ring in play. Nobody wants to be the one who gets picked by this. We're on Trinket Mage to tutor up. Maybe we have a decent selection of ones. Harbinger of the Seas is not a card we've seen a ton of, but fits perfectly in a mono blue deck, right? Lawan Cephalid Empress, a banger of a card. When it comes into play, return all blue creatures your opponents control to their hand. Your opponent can't play blue creature spells. If you're going into a tournament where Nadu is the most popular deck and Derevi playing Nadu in the 98 is also really popular, or the 99 is also really popular, pretty good. People can't cast Lost Oracle, stuff like that, you know? And we got the Clone, Con Sphinx, we're going big, and then Hullbreaker Horror. Pretty dedicated One Ring deck, and if you get infinite mana and the One Ring is in play, you can easily go infinite with Hullbreaker Horror. All right, we got the Git Probe, checking for things, and we're going really heavy on the wheel effects. We got Twister Windfall, you would kind of expect to see this in any blue deck that values this effect, and then Days Undoing, which is 3 mana. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, draw 7 cards. Time Twister effect. If it's your turn, end the turn. It's over. There's nothing you can do. It is wheel pass guaranteed. I don't think we're on extra turn effects, it doesn't look like. So that's the only other way you could kind of take advantage of it. We're also not on Narset, which you might expect to see in a deck like this. I mean, so far it looks like we're being decently reactive with our stuff, and we have some value-y creatures as well, but like, you know, Harbinger of the Seas, Lawan, these are very much things that don't do anything for us other than split on opponents. That is another way to just win, right? You have a Narset. Narset Days Undoing wins the game, and then it Ultra wins the game with these other effects. We've got Tempted by the Auric. For each opponent, gain control up to 1 target creature, planeswalker that player controls with mana value 3 or less. I've never thought about this card really. I mean, this is a lot of things, right? This hits like, okay, I'll take Nadu, Tymna, Najeela, Derevi, whatever. Give them over here. That's pretty good. We have untap effects to take advantage of the One Ring, which we're able to get into play decently often. We've got Dream's Grip to be able to do that. Twiddle, the OG untapper. Repeal to be an okay thing you can do. I'm really surprised at the lack of like Into the Flood Maw so far in these deck lists. If you're looking for this kind of effect, Stifle. Not an effect we see a ton of here. It doesn't look like we're on the Trick Bind, which is the one, if we see a Stifle effect, usually in US cEDH, it's more likely to be Trick Bind because it always works, but we're on the Stifle here. Dramatic Reversal, we might be ISO revving. We're on Flare of Denial. Seems like a pretty good Flare of Denial deck. You don't have a million in play, but it also like, once your commander hits, you don't really need it to keep hitting. So you can sack it. It's pretty nice. Also just realized Harbinger of the Seas, a nice little combo with the Island Walk of Thada Adel. We are on 1 extra turn effect and Nexus of Fate in this ridiculous artwork. Then a lot of free interaction effects, you know, Force we expect, Misdirection, Commandeer also showing up. Artifacts, we got a decent amount of them, you know, stuff that makes mana, things like Jeweled Amulet, which we see in lower color decks here as well. And then Spellbook, you have no maximum hand size. Good. I'm going to draw 80 million cards with the One Ring. I'm going to need the lack of maximum hand size. Both the key effects, this is what we're doing, right? We are on the Icecrown Scepter to go infinite. We've got our own One Ring. We got the Throne of Eldraine, which again, only very rarely shows up nowadays in the monocolor decks. Enchantments. Oh, card that I felt like could be good and has never showed up before. Okay, that's cool. Copy Artifact, we've seen this before. Just starting to see play over here. Steel Enchantment. In a mono blue deck, the downside of double blue mana pips is so much lower. This is just like a free include, it feels like a lot of the time. Ristic you expect, Mind Over Matter, combos with the One Ring. Phibian Downpour, 2 and a blue. Storm, Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue frog creature with base power and toughness 1/1. Pretty hot. Again, not the best with Nadu. You got to target all of them. You know, what are you going to do? But it is very good against other creature sort of decks. Can really shut down some powerful stuff. Does feed Dockside like crazy though. You got to watch out for that. 32 lands, still keeping the land count very high and basically just running any kind of utility stuff we could find here. Reliquary Towers, fairly free include in mono blue. Trenzalore Clock Tower. Do we have any way to get a Time Lord or use these counters? Is there anything we can do with this at all? We definitely don't have a Time Lord. You let me know if you figure out a way to use these time counters in this deck, because I sure don't see it. Coming in at 8th, we've got Rogside Till I Die. Got these standard 6 creatures that we used to see. We're not having the Valley Flood Call or anything like that. No very spicy includes, I don't think. We are lacking a Time Twister running Wheel of Misfortune in its place. Makes sense. I don't want a Twister either. Both the extra turn effects, Red of Flame, Infernal Plunge. No Ristic Tutor in this one. I guess they just don't know. They don't know. They can't all know. If there's something missing here, it's not very obvious to me. Instance. Kind of the same deal. We got the Flare, Naws. All the interaction I expect to see. Culling, Dark Rit. Looking like a textbook Rogside list without any of the weird experimenting for Citadel Adel stuff or anything like that. We'll see if we have like a ley line when we get below, but looking pretty normal so far. We are on the grinding station. Defense grid, no Conqueror's Flail. Bunch of mana rocks. Enchantments, the same 5 we normally see, so not doing any ley line stuff. Although we do see a higher land count than normal. We got like Forbidden Orchard popping in, Emergent Zone going a little deep to make that Necropotent even better. So 26 lands. We're getting to where the staple number now is 23 here in the US. Probably missing a couple cards here I'm not seeing. I'll compare this to my Rock Side list and see if something pops out. Okay, so yeah, they're not on Snap. We knew about the Twister. They're not on Snap. They're not on the Blue-Red Talisman. They're not on Git Probe. Then we knew about the Flood, the Flood Caller and the Twister. And then no Surveil land. I think Undersea Sewers is busted in this deck, actually. I think you should run it. Yeah, just cutting a couple cards that aren't must runs. Twister, if you own one, if you could run it in a non-proxy event, you should. Git Probe, though, Blue-Red Talisman, it is probably like it a little bit better than Fellwar Stone. I mean, we've seen like a lot of blue-green and mono-blue decks already in this, so we've already seen like Fellwar Stone might not work as often as you want. Still pretty reasonable cuts, I think, if you are wanting to go a little higher in the land count. Maybe they just like the feel of that. 7th place, we got one of those Derevis. Let's see if they're getting up to some Nadu nonsense. Oh, good goshly, they are. Nomads and Core. We got some Dorks, Esper Sentinels. We got a Mockingbird player. Finally, we're playing some of these Bloomburrow cards. Another Weathered Wayfarer player. They out there searching for lands, dude. They are looking, and I hope they find them. Oh, there's some other stuff I've never seen before. Dauntless. We got the Kinnan in here. Ghostly Pilfer. Again, they just like this card. I don't know. Shaman and Core, which is 2 mana. Basically, this just gives you another Nomads at mana value 2 instead of 1. We're on the Storm Drake and the Gilded Drake. Pretty popular here. On the Aven Mind Sensors. There's the Nadu. We know it. We love it. Ranger Captain. We're on Yisan. Wow. We got some engines in our deck. I mean, yeah, that lets you put in a Nomads or a Halfling, something like that. A Meal, we know this can combo with Derevi with anything that taps for a lot of mana. Okay, there's some cool stuff here. Malleable Imposter, 4 mana flash flying, enters as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except it's a fairy shapeshifter. I don't know if this is the best version of this effect. You got Stunt Double here as well. Do we need technically 4 clones that are at the 4 mana value? Probably not. I would run Clever Impersonator. That has more upside than like, I don't know. Malleable Imposter probably has the worst of the upsides here. Mocking Doppelganger goads the other creature. That can be relevant. We're on the Roaming Throne, double up our Derevi. So Roaming Throne on Wizard are just busted. We get to hit Nadu or Bird, I guess, in this deck. They're both Bird Wizards, but Nadu and Derevi doubled up. Bleh. Gross. Bro, naming on Mockingbird too? Copy your dockside doubled because he's a bird? Yo, that's crazy. Peregrine Drake. That's another thing you can flicker to go infinite with a meal. It's a roundabout way to do it, but you can. And then Teferi. They love it. The people love Teferi. I don't know what it is. Sorceries. Oh my goodness. Wargate. That's 2018 again. Finale of Devastation. Eldritch. Wargate. These are ways to tutor things up and put them into play. We love doing that here. Instance, we're a Flare deck. We'll take a look back at the creatures. We're an Offer deck. Hate to see it. Fierce, Force, still got the MBT Chord. Domri's Call. Looks pretty clean. Notably, no Worldly Tutor. If Worldly Tutor is not good enough in your Bant deck with 34 creatures in it, that card is just not cEDH playable anymore, I guess. I don't know what to tell you guys. That's wild. We are on the Crop Rot. We got to get a blue creature count. You know how we do it here. Derevi itself. 1, 2, 3, and 8, maybe. We're sacking Peregrine Drake to Flare of Denial. Things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. Artifacts, relatively low. We're not hating on them, but we're not running a lot of them either. No Mox Diamond. I bet this deck is on like 30 lands and there's no Mox Diamond. Let's look. I gotta see. 31. Can't be stopped. I'm on a roll today. You should run Mox Diamond if you have it. Could be a budget concern. Again, you never know with some of the non-proxy events. We're on Birthing Pod. Super nice option in Derevi deck. Pretty busted. One Ring, of course, busted. Enchantments. Another deck on Carpet. Maybe they just really like that effect over there. Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth get a lot more powerful when you're untapping your lands with Derevi. We are on the Sylvan Library as an engine. Mystic Ristic will be here. And then 31 lands. Again, the land counts are high. The inclusion of Pain lands also oddly high. We're on the Cradle. Manamo, Talongate. So good bit of utility in our mana base. Shifting Woodland. No Emergent Zone. Not sure how much you need it. You can do a lot of your stuff instant speed in Derevi anyways. We are a Crop Ride deck, so there's always going to be some value to it, but I don't think you have to run it in this list. Doesn't look like it. In very similar colors to Derevi, we've got Omnath, Locus of Creation. With Renin 6, we are cEDH, dude. Banned in Legacy. Our format is busted. Renin 6, huh? What does it do? Pings Bowmasters? I love this card. Really reminds me of when I got like really into Magic when MH1 came out, and it was like $100 card. Take me back. Bunch of mana dorks, Mockingbird, Nomads. So we're also doing Secret Commander Nadu, and it's so gross. And Omnath. I mean, I guess, hey, you want a bunch of landfall triggers? Nadu is your guy. 2 different in-core effects to be able to trigger Nadu, which isn't your commander, by the way. Ragavan, Gilded, and Volatile. So these cards just being way more popular over there. Ewit, that can get people dead for us. I've never seen a Rocco splashed in a non-Cis-A list. That is a wild include, my dude. We got to get that Nadu, I guess. Also on the Emil, that, you know, we got combos with that. We can do things. Backside Emil. Boop, 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 draw our deck with Omnath. Doesn't look like we're doing the food chain stuff. Good. I don't really like food chain right now. And we have enough options to just have an unbelievable board state, it looks like already. Also on the Plywall, not sure if I mentioned that. This is cool because Kitten really is already okay with Omnath to just draw a card. Unless you're already looping somehow, you're not going to be able to like really trigger the extra landfall triggers. But with Nadu out, yeah, you might. And then also you are doing Kitten Nadu stuff. Like that can just lead to some busted stuff. It's really cool that Nadu is getting into like not quite dockside level status, but like I don't know the last time we had a creature that came out that was getting decks built around it to this extent other than dockside. I can't really think of another one that was recent. Sorceries, lots of tutors. We're loving that effect. I mean, we're going as deep as Rocco in the deck, so you know we're running plenty of tutors. We're on the gamble. Don't always see that in these creature piles, but this could also be a breach deck. We don't know. Nature's Lore, which is a fine ramp effect. 2 mana. It's about as good as a rock. Finale, and then we're on Restore. 1 and a green. Put target land card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Kind of cool. You can take opponent's lands. Unless there's some kind of specific land we want to be able to rebuy, and there's something we can do with like this and Eternal Witness, and we're strip mine locking people, which doesn't really work on this format. I don't know. We'll see if we can find a reason for the Restore. Instance. Offer Ephemerate. We're doing the Spellseeker line. No Final Fortune. No, it's just good value. I mean, it's also busted with Nadu. Bunch of mana. Fierce and SWAT, I'm curious about how good they are with a 4-pip commander. Maybe not the best. Rest of this looks pretty good and clean to me. We're actually on the Worldly Tutor. It was good enough for this deck. Crazy. Artifacts, very low artifact count. Diamond, Petal, Chrome Mox. Basically just saying I don't need Soul Ring and Mana Crypt because they don't cast Omnath, maybe? That's very strange. We're also on the One Ring. One Ring's a lot easier to cast if you have Soul Ring and Mana Crypt in your deck though. Wild Growth showing up here. Tough to pick between this and Utopia Sprawl. Both just kind of weird in a 4-color deck. Another Carpet Enjoyer and a Sylvan Library Enjoyer. And another Trouble in Paris player. 33 lands. We're going heavy. Okay, we got the Dryad Arbor. You can do some nonsense with Dryad Arbor in this deck. We can flicker the Dryad Arbor to re-trigger Omnath. There's not a land I think we want to loop. I guess this could buy back Dryad Arbor, put it back into play if it's died or something, which maybe the deck could struggle with because you can't like make your land drop, do a combo, Ewit, get back Dryad Arbor because you've already made your land drop. So that is a way to buy it back. But I feel like the Dryad Arbor line is not always your main plan. Also, again, we're not breaching in this deck. I think when you're doing the Nadu stuff, I guess that's taking the place of that. But yeah, we're on Cradle, Horizon of Progress, decent utility thing. I guess we could buy that back. That doesn't seem that good. Talon Gates. Oh, we're not on Lightning Bolt, so we can't even infinitely bolt our opponents. I feel like you should probably do that. That just can clean up your ability to kill people really easily. Like you can instant speed just boop, 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 flicker, Ewit, bolt people to death. That's like a free include. Lightning Bolt should definitely be in here. Cool deck. I love seeing the Nadu build around. It's pretty sick. 5th place, Malcolm Tevesh. You saw the Tevesh. You thought it was Rog. Malcolm Tevesh. We got you this time. Blue black. What are we doing? Are we doomsdaying? Are we grinding? We're running a lot of creatures. Oh, we're doing cool stuff. Okay. Changeling Outcast is a pirate. So we're leaning into pirates already more than I've seen. I don't think I've seen Changeling Outcast in a Malcolm deck. I think I've only seen this in Yuriko. So we're already going deeper than we've ever gone before. Greedy Freebooter. When it dies, scry 1, create a treasure token. Pretty decent with Tevesh. It's also a pirate. Siren Storm Taber, Spectral Sailor. We've seen these in Malcolm decks. They're not that uncommon. Kite Sail Larcenist again. Just a card that pops up. Pirate synergies. It's pretty good. Braids. Love to see it with in the Tevesh sort of decks. Got Thralls lying around. Maybe some pirates. Other stuff you want to sacrifice. We do have somebody playing the Clever Impersonator here. I think if you're going to play a actual factual 4-mana clone, this is the one to play for most decks. Notion Thief. I like it. I mean, we saw a deck that had 4 wheels in it already. Rockside had 3. I think it's pretty good. We'll see. We're probably on the Windfall and Twister here too. We'll see. Metamorph, Yawgmoth. Again, this is something we saw in like the Rog Tevesh builds. taking advantage of those thralls, getting rid of that Bowmaster so we can draw some cards with Tevesh. And Hullbreaker Horror, we can win the game with by activating Tevesh infinitely, but we get infinite mana. And then Hoarding Broodlord can win the game in a bunch of different ways. We'll see what we're doing, but we're probably not doing the Saw in Half shenanigans and probably some reanimation package. Sorceries. Okay, we already got a new one. These videos are always the most work. I have to figure things out. So we have their little reanimate package. I didn't expect Unearth to be in it. Unearth, not a bad card, but doesn't seem phenomenal. Hidden Strings. So maybe we're kind of dedicated to untapping something. It doesn't seem like we'd be a one ring deck. None of our creatures really do much with that, and neither of our commanders do either. That's curious. Lively Dirge, I guess kind of leaning into a similar space as Unearth. Just kind of like, I guess we're value oriented into getting stuff out of the graveyard. I'm really surprised to see Notion Thief with no wheel effect whatsoever. You don't have to go like ultra heavy on them and try to do like a Opus Thief sort of old school build. It can just be good at super punishing other people's draw engines or their own wheels, but kind of expect to see one of them. Grasp, Deluge, we'd love to see it. Eagle Vision's new. I gotta read this one. 4 and a blue, free running for 1 and a blue. So if you deal combat damage to a player with an assassin or commander, you can spend 2 mana to cast it, draw 3 cards. So hit somebody with Malcolm, make a mana, use that and 1 other mana to draw 3 cards. That's a pretty good rate. And then Peer into the Abyss. We're based. We're more likely to be on sacrifice now that I see this to do the Broodlord Saw in Half Peer thing. Notably, Peer is way scarier now. That Flare of Duplication is super popular. It was already a problem with SWAT. I mean, we're even seeing Omnath run SWAT here, and that commander mostly just comes down to win the game. So instance, we are on that sacrifice, so we can Broodlord, get the Saw in Half it, get sacrifice, get Peer into the Abyss, beep bop boop. We get to do the whole thing. So we're on a Tomb, fits our reanimation package. Dispel as interaction. Oh, we're on days? Oh, we're dazing. We're dazing for days out here. Reign of Filth, card we see over there a little bit more. Don't see so much of here now. I guess maybe it can help push some of the big stuff. I mean, we just do have like a lot of ability to push for mana all of a sudden with Dark Rate, Coin the Week, Sacrifice, Reign of Filth. I mean, we can hardcast this Hoarding Broodlord if we have to. That's what it takes. We'll get it done. Other includes Mana Drain, a lot better when you're doing Hullbreaker stuff. Lemduel's Vault, Shallow Grave, so lots of reanimation effects, the Saw in Half we expected. Admiral's Order is 1 blue. If you attack with a creature this turn, you may pay blue rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target spell. So it's a counter spell that incentivizes you to go to combat, actually incentivizes you to play better in a way, because it's like, hey, do your stuff that matters post combat. Don't give your opponents any info. Curious how this one's played out for sure though. Around the Fierce, MBT, Rollick, Sink into Stupor, Misdirection Force. Did not expect an ad nauseum here. J-Lo, Manifold Key. So the tap untap shenanigans we're doing, right? We have the key. We saw that we had the hidden strings. So the things we can do that with are Wishclaw Talisman, the One Ring, we know about that one, and then Thran Dynamo, I guess, is the other option. I mean, I guess it's about the same as with Mana Vault. Still seems like an odd include. Maybe there's like a busted land or something we can use it with. I don't know. It just still seems odd. We're also on the Sensei's Top, Skull Clamp. You kind of expect this in these sort of builds. Sensei's Top makes me think we're more likely on counterbalance, but it can also just be good to manipulate the top of your library when you draw as much as you do with Tevesh. We are in the counterbalance and the Steel Enchantment. 30 lands. That's just how we do it over there. Another Reliquary Tower player. What is Quicksand? Add a color to your mana pool. Sacrifice it. Target attacking creature without flying gets -1/-2 until end of turn. What is happening? That's an interesting one. They've definitely dug deep. They have dug deep. Is there something we can do with that? Are we going to attack with our freebooter and kill it? I am often speechless in these Japanese coverage videos. Hidden Strings. I'm still a little perplexed on. I still don't quite get that one, but overall, I mean, this looks like a really cool take on a Dimir list. Next up, we got an Esika or Esika. I always think Esika. Esika's Chariot, right? No one says Esika's Chariot. So let's see what we're doing here with Esika. Creatures. Okay, I think we are doing the wild thing that I expected, which is awesome. You're going to see 5 color, good stuff, dorks, higher on the dork count. We'll get to the weird stuff, but Thoracle, Spirit Guides. What's all this other stuff? Hermit Druid. Okay, we see that in cEDH. What is with all these other things though? What are these? Well, there are a bunch of MDFCs because we are running things like Undercity Informer, which you can use to have target player reveal a top card of their library until they reveal a land, then put those cards in their graveyard. Balustrade Spy does a similar thing. Thing about this, if we go down to lands, so we don't have any, not any real ones, because we are playing Oops All Spells here in cEDH. You're going to see a bunch of MDFCs. So basically what we're going to do is mill our entire library and we're going to mill some sort of way to win. So we see the Narcomoeba here. So that usually means that we're maybe likely to do Dread Return stuff, but we'll get there. Blood Gas will come into play from our graveyard. And then Hermit Druid also just lets us do this thing. A bunch of lands that we don't really have to talk through. So Poxwalkers leans into this as well. 3 mana, but whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you can return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So for instance, I cast some kind of flashback spell, cast my commander, whatever, Poxwalkers will come into play. Fate Stitcher, for a blue, you can unearth it. So if we got some mana lying around, we can get that into play. So you can kind of see where we're going with this. We got lots of ways to mill our entire library and just get to that Thassa's Oracle really, really quick. Really got to put like the blinders on to avoid the MDFCs that are just here to make our deck work at all, like Stump Stomp. So Cabal Therapy has flashback, sacrifice a creature. This works with Poxwalkers. I'm pretty sure it even works if you sacrifice Poxwalkers, which is kind of dumb, but it's just a weird rules thing. This also allows you to, if the Dread Return, for instance, which we are on here, is in your hand, you can Cabal Therapy targeting yourself to get Dread Return back into your graveyard. So we got a bunch of tutors, Lively Dirge, put things from the graveyard into play. We love doing that. Deluge is a wipe of choice. A little surprised we're even doing any board wipes in this list. Destroy the Evidence, 5 mana, destroy target land. Its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal land, lives in their graveyard. So we're going that deep. Okay. Then Unburial Rites, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, flashback 3 and a white. So if we have access to that mana, we can just cast that from the graveyard, put the Oracle into play. Trying to make sure, I guess Agadeem's Awakening could also come up. That lets us reanimate. Just making sure there's not too many MDFCs that actually have text on them here. Instants, interaction, stuff like that. Calling the Weak, Dark Writs, tutors. We got Turn the Earth, which we can flashback to put cards on top of our library. Up to 3 cards, so we could just put Thassa's Oracle on top. Memory's Journey works similarly. Works with Hermit Druid, the other stuff we're doing. Disrupting Shoal, a card we've seen just a touch of in the cEDH, or in the Japanese meta. Free bit of interaction. We want as much of that as we can, right? Like we're trying to jam. We're on the Intuition. Hey, we're doing all kinds of graveyard shenanigans. Didn't see a Brain Freeze. I don't think we're doing a traditional Breach Lime. We're not even bothering to run Consultation or Tainted Pact. We're doing a Thoracle the good old fashioned way. Just mill our whole library. Artifacts, fast, free mana, stuff like that. Pentad Prism. We don't get to run fetch lands, so we don't have the good fixing that 5-color decks do. This can help us, like if we get a blue land and a red land and we need to cast black spells, which we do, this can help us filter our mana. Birthing Pod is a pretty cool option. Also lets us turn our commander into Balustrade Spy. And then, okay, enchantments. Carpet, 2 MDFCs that don't really have text, and Bridge from Below. When a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, Bridge from Below is in your graveyard, make it 2/2. When a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, Bridge from Below is in the graveyard, exile it. A weird enchantment that doesn't do anything when it's in play. This works really well with our Poxwalker shenanigans we talked about. We can Narcomoeba into play if we're able to like flashback Cabal Therapy. Poxwalker comes into play as well. When that happens, Bridge from Below will trigger, we'll make a creature, and then we can flashback Dread Return by sacking 3 creatures, put Thassa's Oracle into play. And then we don't have any lands. No mana base for me to critique other than the billion MDFCs that help this deck function. This is really all in on one type of way to win. Doesn't have to be turbo win turn 1, but it is very all in on what it's trying to do. It doesn't really have backup. You have to mill the library. You have to have access to the graveyard. Win with your Thoracle at the end. This is a super cool deck. I have no idea how it plays out, but it was good enough to get 4th here in the Swiss, so it has to be pretty good, right? Something that I think players who want to experiment with the format and what it can really do and look like, it's a cool thing to look at because we don't get too many decks that totally subvert what traditional cEDH deck building looks like, and this is one of the few decks that does. Okay, and so now we're getting into what really is the top 4. Our placements have been sort of to get top 12, but now these are the players who played in the top 4, which will be 3 that we're going to go over, and then our champion. Gitrog Monster, a deck that I frequently get comments about and very infrequently actually get to cover because it very rarely does well in tournaments anymore. I don't make the news, I just report it. Basically, you draw cards and get dredge effects and lands with dredge like Dagmar Salvage to be able to work your way through your deck to get into a very convoluted way to win the game. Only new cards we see is 6, which makes a ton of sense in this deck. You're already running cards that can combo with it and are powerful with it in this deck anyways. You like discarding lands, like it's literally doing all the stuff that you want to do. Like this is a easy include. So we have discard outlets like Putrid Imp, Noose Constrictor, Wild Mongrel that will allow us to just pitch a thing into the graveyard. Gitrog Monster does not care where the land comes from. It gets in the graveyard, you get to draw. And then we have dredge effects. Fulgari Grave Troll, Stinkweed Imp. Land gets to the graveyard, we draw a bunch. We choose not to draw and instead we dredge. And when a land gets in the graveyard, we get to dredge again if there's another dredge effect in the yard. Especially because we have a discard outlet and a dredge effect, we're able to pitch that dredge effect, dredge that card, pitch it again. That's where we see sort of Dakmor salvage stuff really come in. Oracle of Moldiah, play an additional land on each of your turns. Put the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land card. Not one we see a lot of here, but can give you some extra knowledge with Gitrog, gives you even more land drops into play. Gitrog itself already gives us an extra one. Underrealm Lich, if you would draw a card, instead look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. That's pretty likely to just let you keep drawing cards a lot, because we're going to run a lot of lands and we get a look, and if the top 3 includes a land, we get to pitch it to the graveyard and keep drawing. And then Kozilek and Ulamog, you see the Shuffle Titans, they're pretty known for this deck because these will eventually allow us to sequence things so that we're able to get through our entire deck, getting all the cards we need. Like if something ends up in the graveyard and we actually need it to be able to combo off at the end, we're able to make sure we can keep going and going until we get everything that we need. I will not explain this loop to you. Gitrog Monster player, in the description, in the comments, please help these players out. Tell them why not to play your deck. I'm not hating. I think this deck is cool. It's just a mess. Sorceries. So we got some tutors, things you expect to see. Cards like Edge of Autumn that just fit what this deck does, right? Sack a land. I get to draw. This also draws. I can dredge, blah, blah, blah. Life from the Loam. Return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard. Dredge 3. This can do some shenanigans with 6, with like Lotus Petal and 3 lands in your graveyard. Got the Culling Ritual, Deluge, stuff we expect to see in this list. Instants. Crop rotation, busted here. Legolas's quick reflexes is pretty nice. It can be, I mean, one way that they beat you. The problem with Gitrog Monster is if Gitrog Monster isn't in play, your deck doesn't really get to do the thing. You do have a little bit more options now with like 6 being able to at least make infinite mana. I don't know if it's going to win you the game, but Binds of Vastwood, Veil of Summer again, doing that similar thing. Really the best interaction we have in these colors. You know, Snuff Out, Dismember, Rollick, Realms Uncharted searches for lands and puts them in the yard. Boop, boop, Gitrog Monster triggers. Artifacts. Mana, Crucible of Worlds, because we're doing that. Your lands are in our graveyard. Golgari Signet, I guess really valuing being able to turn colorless mana into colored mana. We might be on a lot of utility lands, so that could kind of make sense. Then enchantments, Exploration, Chains of Mephistopheles, talk about a thing that needs to be explained. Prevents draw engines from being actual draw engines, as well as helps fuel our nonsense, because this affects us as well. If we would draw, then we discard a land, we get to draw. This can help keep us going and looting through the list. Oblivion Crown, 1 in a black, makes a creature a discard outlet. Soul Innervation, 3 in a black, flash. When it enters, target creature gets -4/-4. When 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Pretty sure we can just loop our graveyard and stuff with Gitrog and the Shuffle Titans, and this will kill everybody. And it just kills the thing too. Lands, we're on 45 of them. The count is staying high. Bazaar of Baghdad, tap, draw 2, then discard 3 cards. Notable, very busted, powerful card in the game of Magic, really. Not many decks get to use it very well in cEDH because discard and dredge strategies just don't have a lot of enablers. You need one to be in the zone, really, to make it make sense, and that's what this deck has. So lots of lands that end up in the yard. The Dakmor salvage that we talked about. Cabal Pit ends up in the graveyard. Homeward Path. We saw a lot of Gilded Drakes already. If they Drake your Gitrog Monster, you need to be able to get that boy back. What is this? Add 2 to play a legend. Okay, I didn't know we had it like that. I didn't know that existed. Pretty cool to see Gitrog Monster getting to do the thing here. Next up, we got another Tivit. I actually think the only commander that had multiple showings in this event, which is kind of wild to think about. We're on the Teferi, another Weathered Wayfarer. What's happening? What's going on, guys? And they're on the Emrakul. Very similar list. A couple things not here. They're not on the Teferi. On the Mockingbird, love to see it. No Fimage. Sorceries. We're on the Savine's Drake. Maybe we're intuitioning. You never know. We're on the Languish. This is something we haven't seen the Tivits play too recently, but they're going with that and Deluge and Nuclear Fallout as their board wipes of choice, not running the Supreme Verdict we saw in the other one. Instance, another offer player, Fatal Push. Whew, we don't see that. We don't see that too much in this format. If you're not mono black, okay, they got the Fatal Push. They're ready. I feel like you just run Dismember over Fatal Push. It just hits more things consistently at 1 mana. If you want to just 1 mana kill something, I think, especially if you're not a Nas deck, you should probably be running Dismember. Another Orange Chant player, also on the Get Lost, Limdul's Vault, Mana Drain, stuff we see in these kind of builds, and then Intuition that we sort of expect to see when there's a Savine's Wreck. Artifacts, notably neither of these Tivits run like the Grafdigger's Cage, stuff like that. I think this Tivit I'd featured before and failed to mention that they run odd things like Azorius Signet and Dimir Signet instead of the Talisman effects. Again, my best guess is they really like being able to get double colored pips at the cost of needing to filter. You can't go like land, Soul Ring, Signet, can't end on a Mystic Remora. But when you untap with that, you are going to have access to more colors, which can be nice in these higher color decks. Also on the One Ring, enchantments on the Dress Down. I mean, looks like it would be pretty good meta call here. And then 30 lands still on that high land count, and Archway of Innovation still popping up. Very similar Tivit build. I would not be surprised if those players were kind of of working on the deck list together and just made a couple different calls in a few different slots. First place out of the Swiss, Rog Tevesh. Really low on the creatures. We're on the Goblin. We're on the Yawgmoth, again, doing that kind of thing. Not doing braids, not doing a lot in creatures, really. Getting pretty lean on the creature count. Op Agent still showing up, though. Nuclear Fallout as a wipe, and Deluge, so doubling up on that effect. We're on the Warrior's Oath, so at least one of the extra turn sorcery effects. Lots of cards to take advantage of Rogue Rack, like Jessica's Will, Infernal Plunge, things like that. We've been running the Scheming Symmetry. If you're in a deck like this, where you can crack the top with Tevesh, makes a lot of sense. And we're Pure into the Abyss Gaming. We're doing it. We are the Flare of Duplication deck. Worst case scenario, you flare, I'm going to flare my Pure again. I'm going to double flare. We'll see what happens, bud. The hottest tech that we've ever covered, Active Volcano. 1 red, destroy target blue permanent, return target island to owner's hand, get Ragnard. On the Slaughter Pact, Tybalt's Trickery, Withering Boon even. We're stretching the color pie to counter these spells, I tell you that much. Final Fortune, Flare. So we're on like the rituals and even Seething Song. We don't often see the like 2-mana rituals other than Cabal Writ. They do show up in some of these Rakdos lists. When you are trying to power out something like a Pure into the Abyss, it can help. Decent amount of artifacts. Oh, that's a cool one. Got the LED, so we're probably breaching. Another person on the keys. The keys are just really popular over there. They're untapping our rocks, like our Grim Monoliths, our Mana Vaults, and our One Ring. We got the Defense Grid, and we got Disruptor Flute. 2 mana flash. As it enters, choose a card name. Spells with a chosen name cost 3 more. Activate abilities of sources with a chosen name can't be activated. Kind of cool. You know, it's pretty good in Commander. I hope you're not playing against the Malcolm Tevesh and trying to hit Tevesh, because this counts yours as well. Yeah, I mean, you can just be like, all right, what beats me here? Mindbreak Trap, flash in Disruptor Flute name Mindbreak Trap. You gotta pay 3 chunk. Scroll Rack, kind of between that, Top, and Skull Clamp. We get to really dig quite deep through our deck with some selection and just top deck manipulation and just draw. Enchantments, keeping it clean, Necropotence, Underworld Breach, and even here in Rakdos, 33 lands. Running stuff like Blast Zone that I very rarely see in this format. I can see board shades where this is annoying and looks good. Also on the E Zone, we're seeing a little bit more of that. You know, we're seeing this in the Black Rogue Rack decks. Basic Mountain. Again, we haven't seen anything that punishes non-basics in any of these lists. Maybe in the Swiss, we did see like a decent amount of like Archon of Emirs, or we expected some effects to punish those, but not really here. Cool, Rog, Tevesh, fairly turbo, Nas, Pier, also running a bunch of board wipes with Damnation and stuff. We got to deal with them Nadu somehow, I guess. You got to respect them. And our winner, again, for however many times I've covered this, 3 in a row, 4 in a row, we got Tymna Kraum, the only Tymna Kraum of the event. He skipped straight to top 4, so I guess that helps because this was the previous winner. He's still playing the TNK. His TNK build does look a little different from what we expect to see. We don't have the Mockingbird. I don't think there's any Bloomburrow stuff in here. We'll see. And then some cards that like we don't especially value in Tymna Kraum shells over here. Fairy Mastermind, not too popular. Deep Gnome Terramancer, not popular at all, really. Loyal Apprentice hasn't been popular in quite a while in these builds. They come up every now and then. Fairly notable, all these cards, as well as, you know, Lotho, Dockside, Ragavan, Bowmasters, whatever, all work with Delny, which this list is also on. Does make them a bit better. You know, if you get to double Deep Gnome, Terramancer, I just say do this only once each turn. How's the rules work with that? Double draw, Fairy Mastermind, you know, Lotho, whatever. Still very powerful. Some staples not here, like no Phyrexian Metamorph. We are on the Fimage, again, no Mockingbird. Sorceries, we have the Rite of Flame, Jessica's Will, Praetor's Grasp, stuff we starting to see more of in TNKs over here. I think that never really left there though, at least in this player's build, I don't think. Instance, Offer You Can't Refuse. It's just popular over there. I don't know. Got the Culling the Weak, Dark Writ, No Strict Serenade. We're on the Swords No Path. We got both the Red Blast, Born Upon a Winds here, Final Fortune. We love gamers who game. Deadly Rollick, not especially popular in Tymna Kraum. Could be pretty nice here, especially like, I mean, when I see Delny, Loyal Apprentice, stuff like that, I'm thinking we're a little bit more in on the Tymna plan. So maybe we expect to cast our commanders a little bit more on average than, you know, some builds. Decent amount of rocks, lower talisman count than we usually see over here. We usually see like talisman of dominance or progress, stuff like that. And we got the Witch Claw, no One Ring. Enchantments a little bit higher. We've got the staple ones over here at least now, as well as including Dress Down, which again makes sense against some of these builds. Like the Derevi's about to go off, stuff like that. Dress Down pretty nice. And then 28 lands, the lowest we've seen, still just a hair higher. And we're also on the Emergent Zone. Yeah, wow. Japanese players, if they're on Necro, they're just on Emergent Zone. That's just how it is. So let me know down below which of these decks was your favorite. What do you think of the Japanese metagame? We didn't see any crazy Rowan Dragonstorm stuff, but we did see some pretty interesting includes and a decent look into maybe the card evaluation in Japan, and maybe get a better look at what the metagame looks like. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.